July 2022, a woman opened her minced beef and found a human finger. The butcher said it was an accident, but police found 12 more victims buried beneath his shop. It was a Tuesday. Unremarkable. The kind of day where the news is about late post or a new pothole near the station. The kind of day nothing ever happens. Linda Park had been buying meat from Gregory's Butchers every other week for 5 years. She didn't know his last name. Nobody did. To the town, he was just Greg. That afternoon, as she prepared shepherd's pie for her 2 boys, something unusual slipped from the midst. She thought it was a deformed bone at first, or gristle, but it had a fingernail painted mauve. She called 999 in tears. The dispatcher noted her tone, panicked, breathless. The report read, "Possible prank. Unclear mental state." Police officers arrived 2 hours later. They assumed it was a Halloween prop, the kind of thing a bored teenager might toss into a butcher's tray for laughs. But when they collected the evidence and sent it to the lab, everything changed. What came back was not a joke. The sample contained active tissue. Not old, not long dead. Human, specifically a female. Caucasian. Estimated age, 28. Time of death, within the last 36 hours. That's when Blackheath became something else. Something darker. Because in a quiet little town where nothing ever happens, someone had started to disappear people and feed the town. Gregory Tull wasn't flashy. He didn't drive. Lived above the shop. Didn't speak unless spoken to. Local kids called him the ghost with a cleaver. But no one meant it. He was polite, clean, wore white every day. You couldn't find a fly in his shop, much less a scandal. But then, the forensics team came back with one more detail. Something that pushed the case from weird to unholy. Inside the meat pack Linda brought in, hidden deep in the lining beneath the tray, they found a trace amount of human blood. It had been washed, then repackaged. Intentionally. Meaning someone tried to cover it up. Meaning this wasn't a one-off accident. This was habit. WeVE launched a full investigation into Gregory's shop and will be. But it was too late. Gregory Tull wasn't at his shop anymore. He had disappeared. By the time they broke open the freezer behind the shop, they knew what they'd find. They just didn't know how much of it. Inside were body parts. Labeled. Measured. Stored. One box read, July. Another, waist bone. Gregory Tull was a ghost in a white apron. He didn't stand out. He didn't want to. He ran his butcher's shop for 16 years, and in all that time, not one complaint. Not one raised voice. Not even a bad review. But Gregory had a rule. No one was allowed inside the back room. Not suppliers. Not health inspectors. Not even his apprentice, who quit after 2 weeks, saying something smelled off. Born in 1969, grew up in South Yorkshire. His father worked in the abattoir, and by age 14, Gregory was helping clean blades. He never went to university. Never married. No siblings. Parents both died within a year of each other. His mother from cancer, his father from a fall nobody talked about. In 1995, he moved to Blackheath. Opened the butcher's shop 3 years later. Paid in full, in cash. Police later confirmed that Gregory disposed of meat waste himself, refused to use council bins. He claimed he didn't trust government services with animal products. But the deeper police dug into his past, the less they found. No social media. No NHS history for the last 10 years. He hadn't been to a GP since 2011. And the most chilling discovery of all, Gregory Tull doesn't legally exist. Records show a Gregory Tull born in Doncaster in 1969, same name, same age. But that man died in 1998 in a boating accident. So who was the man working in that shop? The answer lies in a hidden room beneath the floor. It was 2 feet by 2 feet, covered in sawdust. And beneath it, a makeshift staircase, wooden, cracked, slick with condensation. What they found underground wasn't a basement. It was a dungeon. The smell was unbearable, like iron, rot, and bleach. There were restraints fixed to the wall, a video camera on a tripod, a chair bolted to the floor, and on the far wall, scrawled in red ink, "Waste not, want not." And then came the final discovery. A second chair, smaller, child-sized, facing the first. Gregory Tull wasn't just killing. He was performing, watching, but the question remains, who was the second chair for? Who was watching? They didn't know what they'd find in the shop's freezer, but they knew whatever it was, it wouldn't be beef. When they opened the door, the smell hit first. Not rotting flesh. No, Gregory was too clean for that. It was bleach, thick, lingering, and something sweeter underneath, like copper, like blood trying to hide behind chemicals. Inside the freezer were perfectly stacked trays of meat, wrapped, labeled, clean, but one shelf stood out. It wasn't part of the official inventory. No printed labels, no sell-by dates, just masking tape, a black marker. One tray read, July. Another, waste bone. The tray marked July contained 4 separate vacuum-sealed packages. And when they cut them open, they found something the human mind doesn't forget, even if it tries. Tissue, tendons, a section of jawbone, still pink, still moist. It had been stored recently. One officer vomited into a bucket. Another sat down and wept. They closed the freezer, but that was just the surface. On the far side of the back room, beneath a heavy stainless steel table, was a patch of flooring that sounded hollow. The officers almost missed it, but a drop of blood, dried, brown, almost invisible, had pooled near the edge. And when they pried the boards up, they found the staircase, cramped, rotten, hidden for years. The space below wasn't built for storage. It was colder than the freezer, and far more scary. There were chains bolted to the wall, hooks, a drain in the center of the floor, and shelves, not for tools, but for trophies, jewelry, rings, a pacifier, a woman's compact mirror with the initials JL carved in the corner, and beside them, a notebook, leather-bound, weathered, still damp from the air. The first page read, "The meat must be quiet before it's clean." Then came the dates. March 8th, 2011, June 4th, 2013, October 21st, 2014. 12 dates in total, each one followed by a single name. A few were common: Sarah, Lucy, Emma. Others were initials only. Some were crossed out. Some had notes beside them. One read, "Too loud, never again." And on the last page, blank except for one line. "Don't take from Blackheath twice in 1 year." That's when it became clear. This wasn't impulse. This was process, routine, a system built and perfected over time. He had rules. He had rituals. And worst of all, he had experience. For the detectives, this wasn't just a murder investigation anymore. It was an excavation, a dismantling of someone's double life. A life built not on secrets, but on silence. The town had lived above this room for years. Shopped there, laughed there, told their children to say thank you after getting free sausages. But now, the floorboards had become a tombstone. The press called them the 12, but they weren't a group. They never met. They had nothing in common, except one thing. They crossed paths with Gregory Tull, and none of them came back. When the forensics team began matching DNA from the remains, the first result came fast. Sarah Lee, 27, a freelance photographer from Kent, last seen boarding a bus to Blackheath in 2015. Her parents spent 6 years looking for her. Police had written her off as a runaway. But Sarah wasn't running. She was buried, 3 feet beneath a butcher's floor. Then came Jasmine Moore, hairdresser, 22. Her earrings were found on the trophy shelf, tucked inside a spice tin. Inside her bag was a notebook filled with poems. One read, "He said he liked my eyes, but he bought my silence with bacon." The third match was a shock. Marta Delgado, 41, an asylum seeker from Spain, missing since 2012. She never made it into any database because no one filed a report. No family, no paper trail, only a wristwatch, still ticking, found beside her remains. Over the next 4 days, 9 more names were confirmed, each one more difficult to explain than the last. Leah Creighton, 16, last seen after school. She lived 4 streets from the butcher's shop. Danielle King, 30, worked as a delivery driver, dropped a parcel off at Gregory's back door, never clocked out. Amanda Folsom, 18, missing since New Year's Day, 2011. She had a tattoo, a sparrow on her wrist. Police found it in a sealed jar, submerged in formaldehyde. These weren't random killings. They were collected, selected, each woman pulled into his world, then erased from everyone else's. And still, the town struggled to believe it. He sold their lamb. He gave free bones for their dogs. He laughed at Christmas, wore a paper crown, and called old ladies love. But now the picture had changed. And so had the questions. Why did he keep the names? Why did he log them like orders on a spreadsheet? And if those were the 12 he documented, how many others had no page? The final victim remains unidentified. No match, no dental records, no clothing, just a single note tucked beside the body. She smiled too much. That brought the count to 12. But the evidence pointed higher. A third chair was discovered in the basement, folded flat, hidden behind a stack of crates. It was smaller, child-sized, and with it, a red mitten, worn, still damp with bleach. They thought they had everything. The bodies, the freezer, the names. But there was one thing they hadn't found yet. The why. When they opened the leather-bound journal, the pages were stiff, cracked from age and neglect. It didn't take long for the first officer to stop reading and call for backup, because Gregory had been keeping a log, a detailed log, of each one, and of what happened afterward. The first entry was dated May 19, 2010. The first one. She screamed. And so it began. What followed were simple, dry entries. Next time, be quicker. She wouldn't stop crying. So I had to hit her. Don't take from town twice in 1 month. It wasn't just a record. It was a to-do list. A blueprint. And as they turned the pages, the methods changed. Each victim had a line beside their name. Too loud. Difficult to clean. Almost called for help. It was clear Gregory didn't just kill them. He perfected it. He made sure nothing was wasted. Every part of them had a purpose. Some pages were more disturbing than others. One was entirely devoted to a failed attempt. A woman who got away. A close call. She got too far. I'll have to fix the door next time. She was too strong. And then there were the notes about his rituals. Each victim was not just slaughtered. They were prepared. Wash first, then bind. No witnesses. As the journal progressed, the entries grew darker, more frantic. There were fewer dates, fewer notes. It was as if Gregory was running out of room, running out of time. Or maybe he was running out of victims. The final page was different. It wasn't written in his usual hand. It looked hurried, jagged. She smiled too much. She was annoying. But she won't be forgotten. And beneath the words, there was something else. A list. Names. Not dates this time, just first names. Lily. Rose. Susan. They weren't victims. They were his future. At the bottom, one final sentence. A promise. A chilling, cold promise. I'll keep going until they stop me. The last pages weren't about the victims at all. They were about the process. About how he'd do it, how he'd be careful, methodical, invisible, and most disturbingly, how he'd make it look natural, how to keep the town comfortable, to keep the customers coming in. But in the margins, something stood out. No one looks close enough. The book closed. The shop had been cleaned. Gregory was gone. But in the darkness of that room, one thing was clear. Gregory Tull didn't just want to kill. He wanted to disappear, to blend in, to be the butcher no one ever noticed. The butcher who fed a town and never got caught. They thought it was over, that with Gregory gone, the nightmare had ended. The floor was sealed, the shop boarded up. A police tape fluttered in the wind outside Gregory's butcher's for weeks, until the council finally removed it. Out of sight, out of mind. But trauma doesn't end with tape. And evil doesn't vanish with a missing man. Especially not when the body was never found. 6 months passed. The news cycle moved on. But Blackheath didn't forget. Not when the families of the 12 still walked the high street. Not when the butcher's lights flickered on once in February, despite the electricity being shut off in November. And not when the first copycat letter arrived. It was addressed to Linda Park. Typed. No stamp. Just one line. You fed them too. She brought it to the police. They dismissed it as a cruel prank. Grief attracts flies. But Linda knew better. She changed her locks. Took her boys out of school. Moved in with her sister. But it didn't help. Because the second letter didn't come by mail. It was taped to her car. Same type. Same line. But this time, it added something new. He's still hungry. 3 weeks later, the power grid reported irregular surges near the old butcher's shop. Investigators assumed faulty lines until a retired meter reader spotted something odd. The readings weren't random. They spiked once every 3 nights, always between midnight and 4 a.m. The shop didn't have power, didn't even have an active account. So where was the electricity coming from? Police were called in again. This time, they brought a tech team, and what they found sent the case spiraling into something worse. Behind the shop, inside the condemned building, a small auxiliary panel had been drilled into the wall. New wires, clean cuts, fresh solder. It led beneath the floorboards, but not to the dungeon, to something deeper, another staircase, this one made of concrete. And at the bottom, a room no one had ever documented. No one even knew existed. Movie camera, the footage from a body cam is still classified. But leaks happen. A journalist who reviewed the tape described it like this. Imagine a chapel built for one. Walls lined with hooks and jars. A slab in the middle. Stained, worn, cracked. The smell wasn't bleach this time. It was wax. And something burnt, like plastic and teeth. At the far end of the room was a door. Thicker than the others. Steel. Industrial. Locked from the inside. They brought in cutters. But when they forced it open, there was nothing. Just a wall of concrete. No room. No passage. No sign anyone had been there. But someone had. Because behind the door, in the concrete itself, a handprint had been set in the drying cement. Not full. Just the fingers. Pressed deep. Small. Child-sized. Gregory was gone. But his blueprint wasn't. And now, someone else was following it. Because a week after that discovery, in a different town 80 miles away, another note appeared. Same typeface. Same tape. Stuck to the window of a local butcher. It read, "She smiled too much." The letter on the butcher's window, "She smiled too much," wasn't just a message. It was a copy, almost word for word, taken from Gregory Tull's final journal entry. But Gregory was gone. And this shop? It wasn't his. It was in Surrey, owned by a man named Miles Henley, 47, a third-generation butcher with no criminal record, a local sponsor for the school's football team, and a godparent to 3 children. So how did his window get tagged with a phrase pulled from a sealed investigation? How did a note appear in a shop miles away, in the exact same font, taped the exact same way? And then came the worst part. The morning after the note appeared, a local woman, Isabel Thorne, 29, missing, vanished on her walk home. Her phone was found near the river, screen cracked, still recording. A 9-second voice memo. Just breathing. Panicked. Rushed. And in the last second of voice. Low. Calm. Just 2 words. Don't scream. The press ran wild. Gregory has a disciple. The Cleaver cult. The Blackheath copycat. But investigators weren't so sure. Because fingerprints on the tape matched no one in the system. The footage near the shop? Erased. The CCTV feed had been looped. Not cut. Looping takes skill. Equipment. It takes planning. This wasn't just a sick fan. It was someone with access. A new task force was assembled. All files on the Tull case were reopened. And deep inside one of the evidence boxes, a forgotten photo emerged. It was taken 2 years before the butcher shop raid. A street fair. Gregory is in the frame. Barely. Standing by his stall, smiling faintly at the camera. But beside him, a boy. Early teens. Dark eyes. Holding a meat cleaver. Wearing the same white apron. The photo had been labeled local color. Dismissed as harmless. But when they ran facial recognition through school databases and child welfare reports, one hit came back. Liam Edgley. Reported missing in 2013. Foster child. Last seen in South Yorkshire. No relatives. Case dropped due to lack of leads. But what caught their attention wasn't just his disappearance. It was where he was last placed. A home 2 blocks from the abattoir where Gregory's father once worked. Now the pieces began to fall. The second chair. The small handprint. The red mitten. Gregory hadn't worked alone. He'd been training someone. And the journal? The rituals? The cuts? They weren't just habits. They were curriculum. Forensics went back to the Blackheath shop, this time with ground-penetrating radar. And beneath the concrete slab of the second basement, they found another room. Collapsed. Intentionally destroyed. Inside were 3 skeletons. All children. All undated. One still held a plastic toy. A figurine from a TV show that aired in 2012. The lab confirmed the truth. Liam Edgley didn't vanish. He was reborn, reforged, rewired, not as a butcher, but as an apprentice. They now believed Liam had been with Gregory for at least 4 years, living in the hidden spaces, watching, learning, absorbing. And now, he was free, trained, invisible, and continuing the work. The investigation expanded nationwide. But Liam was a ghost. No digital presence. No ID. No paper trail. Not even a photo after age 13. Until the camera footage surfaced from a petrol station in Dover. A man mid-20s. Calm. Neatly dressed. Buying bleach. Rubber gloves. Chicken stock. He smiled at the cashier. Said have a good one. And walked out. The timestamp? 3 hours after Isabel Thorne disappeared. The CCTV glitched 1 second after he left. But in that frozen frame, something sat at the edge of the counter. A notebook. Weathered. Leather-bound. Exactly like Gregory's. Only this one had something different. A title. Stamped in gold leaf across the cover. Volume 2. The silence between footsteps. They never found Liam. Not officially. Unofficially, there are whispers. A girl missing in Newcastle. A delivery driver vanishing in Somerset. A photo of a tray of meat on Instagram. Captioned, "Waste not." Then deleted. There's talk of a network now. Of others who believe in Gregory's gospel. Of people who never stopped eating his meat. Because Gregory didn't just feed a town. He built a system. And somewhere out there, in a back alley, behind a butcher's counter, under a floor no one checks, that system is still alive. Waiting. Perfecting. Evolving. Because as Gregory once wrote, meat doesn't lie, but people do. So be the meat, and you'll never be caught.